this computer. And we're welcoming Susan to our class today just to talk a little bit more about CUBE. I know we've dipped in, some of us have already dipped in and signed up for an account, and some are just getting started. So maybe just start from the assumption that we know very little about it, and tell us about your story of how CUBE came into being.
All right, so CUBE for Teachers is now global. It started in Ontario, and it's a global education sharing network. And really, it's grown into more of a movement in that educators are collaborating and sharing resources. And our goal at CUBE is to level the playing field and access to resources, because we feel regardless of demographic or where you are in the world, you and your students should have access to resources that make a difference in their life. Because if you speak to any educator, it's more of a vocation than a career choice. And we're here because we want to make a difference in the lives of the children that we're serving and we're working with. And we also feel that although publishers are great and there's amazing, great resources out there, that we know now that it's not a cookie cutter world and we don't all learn the same way, and we need to diversify. So it's fantastic that our school boards and school districts provide us with incredible resources, but they don't always work for the students in our classrooms. So CUBE provides educators with a voice and a choice in finding those resources that meet the needs of the students in their class. And we do, I was just looking at that really great subway map that you shared, Helen, from the Irish Higher Ed, and I was going through and looking through all of the different color train lines, and you have all the different subcategories. And I was making some notes, looking and thinking, you know, CUBE fits into all those categories, whether it's find and use, identify and well-being, because that's the social networks and your digital profile and who you are and your digital footprint. So CUBE fits that very well professionally. The communication and collaboration streamline for the podcasting, the blogs, the journals, the sharing of resources, that all comes under CUBE. And what's interesting too is the reason that the teach and learn, and then there's create and innovate, design thinking, tech tools, classroom tools. The reason it all comes under CUBE is we're a K to 12 plus resource for educators. And we're holistic in the fact that it's not just, you're not just sharing resources that work for your grade 1 literacy lesson or your grade 6 math EQAO prep that you're trying to do with your students. It's for you as an educator and your learning. So your professional development. So if you have a child with ASD in your class and you want to learn more and you find a resource or a great blog, throw that in there. It's all for the educator and the holistic educator.
So I think ultimately this could be the curation tool that teachers need, because now there's this wealth of information available, and CUBE will help me streamline it for my purposes. And then I think the important piece that we, connecting to other people who have similar interests, or finding those who are, in my case, tied to critical digital literacies, and sharing the resources that we've found.
Absolutely, absolutely. And our goal is to make that easier. When we opened out in Ontario, we had a communication portal at the time. And when we opened up globally, we shut it down so we could redesign it. So we're currently working at building that out. And hopefully later this year, there'll be an opportunity for educators to truly collaborate and build those networks and have conversations around resources, whether they want to open up a kindergarten open public group or a private group between you and a fellow colleague or colleagues in your school, to allow for that opportunity to collaborate and really get a deep understanding of the resources and how they're being used and benefiting each individual educator. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're going. We talked about where we're going. That's sort of where we're going. I think that'll make all the difference.
And I think it's phenomenal that this is like a made in Ontario project, like something that I would say, how did this brain wave, this thing happen?
It's an interesting story in that teaching formally as an educator in the school system is a second career for me. Prior to that, I worked in the private sector with children with special needs. And that's kind of been near and dear to my heart. So I worked as an instructor therapist with children with autism, and all of my downtime was spent looking for resources. So whenever I wasn't out doing home visits and working with the kids, I was online trying to find resources and to support their learning. So I kind of thought when I went to Teachers College that, and you all know this now by now as well, there isn't this giant magic key that says here is, you know, the big library hidden only for educators to support your learning. It doesn't exist. Right?
We had this conversation about the binder and how
Yes.
teachers would pass the binder. I said, I've taught grade 2 for 10 years. Here's my binder.
Yeah. And I mean, the binder too, like the binder is really minimal. A lot of us have bins in our basements still to this day, right?
Yeah.
I just over the holidays decided to part with one of those bins because I thought there's no way I'm ever going to use all this paper again. So now those binders have become digital files that live in the cloud, which is great. And Google is awesome for that. But at the same time, all of those, I'm guilty of not organizing my Google Drive at all. I have lists and lists, and I search by keyword because I'm just so busy that I never find the time to organize it. But at the same time, I have a lot of great Google Hyperdocs in my Cube account so that I can just keep them there, and they're attached to wherever they're attached, and I don't have to worry about finding them or keeping them in my personal Google account.
Yes. So for teachers, the teacher candidates that are so new to the profession, and you're starting to collect and gather some of these resources from associate teachers, from people, the projects
Experts
that
in
they're
the
doing.
field, like yourself. Right.
The projects they're doing while they're in the faculty, they can start collecting them into the structures that you've got, kind of embedded in the Cube.
Yeah, so that I mentioned, I don't know how many people watched that little 30-second or 1-minute video that I sent along, but as teacher candidates, you're in a really great position because you're at the forefront of education and you're getting exposed to what's new, what's up and coming, and all those great resources. And then you get to go out into the schools, and you get to work with hopefully very forward-thinking educators that will allow you the opportunity to be exposed to the resources they're using. So you have a great opportunity to compile these resources. One of the challenges that teacher candidates face is that keeping those resources available and at your fingertips once you graduate. Because oftentimes, as teacher candidates with a lot of faculties of ed, your domain emails expire soon after graduation. So I know some faculties of ed are testing out Google Classroom, so they're using that and they're storing it in there. But the problem is once they graduate, they won't be able to get back into that Google Classroom because it's tied to their faculty of education domain. And then other faculties have, OISE has Pepper, which is a great intranet for the teacher candidates. But again, once they graduate, they can't access everything that's in there. Now, that being said, there are important documents, same as in teaching when you get into your career, that shouldn't leave your school board, right? There's copyrighted professional information that has to stay within that domain. But the majority of the stuff that you're acquiring are great lessons, great activities, resources, and professional development pieces that you should take forward with you. So Cube allows that opportunity for you to just share a link on Cube, and it's in there and searchable forever. So once it's stored, and you can categorize it by keywords, so you can make connections. I know we've talked in the past where one of your courses, when they shared the link, they made up their own sort of hashtag, if you will, for lack of a better word, or a keyword that nobody else would have, and they added that keyword to every resource they shared so that all the students could collaborate and just look for the keyword, and every resource that any student had shared under that keyword would be there.
That's a really great idea. As we go into starting to curate sources, we can use the hashtag for the course that would that would help pull all those resources into one place, per se. It's like having a conversation around that the course, and then anything that we know relates to critical digital literacy, we can tag it with the course code. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great idea.
Absolutely. And we've done that with conferences as well, where, because unfortunately not everybody gets to go to a conference, and it's usually the most tech innovative people that get to go, and that's great. But oftentimes when they come back from the conference, all of that hard work that the presenters have put into it often doesn't get past the first person that attended the conference. So, and you've done this before, where you put the links in and you tag it with the conference hashtag or code, so that people can just search for that conference and find all of the resources. And then all that hard work and effort that people put into their presentations can move on. And I like to coin the term, get behind the classroom door, because oftentimes the majority of teachers don't get out from behind their classroom door.
So we could, even think bigger in terms of the faculty of education. that we're all part of, we
Right.
could tag it with a faculty designated hashtag as well, or
Absolutely.
keyword.
Absolutely. That's a great idea.
I'm just thinking, Sean, of all the resources you've collected in the master's program, it could be tagged for other people who are coming into the master's program that could look there for the resources that, apply specifically to master's students.
For sure. And we do have that Chrome extension that's up and running, and it makes it a lot faster and a lot more streamlined to get any resource. So if you're sitting in a class doing coursework and they show you a link or you're on a web page, you can just throw it in without even thinking about it with the push of a button.
I love that. I love that Chrome extension.
And I know we talked about what's coming. We've always had it, we have filters there's a distinction between the teacher candidates account and professional educator accounts. And I don't know if you touched on that at all, or
No.
if you'd like.
Could you?
Yeah, sure. Can I show you?
Yes, please.
Let me just see if I can. I'm just going to try and open it up before I share my page.
Okay.
Sorry, bear with me 1 second.
No.
And our friend driving, you'll have to tune in later to see this on the video.
Yes, yeah. I'll make sure that I post this so that others who couldn't join will get a chance to see as well.
Okay, now I've lost my Zoom. There we go. Share desktop. Okay,
there. Yes.
Let's see. Can we see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So this is just the generic account, which is what you have as a teacher candidate right now, versus the verified educator account. And the verified educator account, just to be clear, is free, as well as the account you have now. The only difference is when you get employed at a school board or a private school, when you put in your school board domain, you can see it gives you all these additional filters. So the benefit here is that because we're now global, anybody can join the Cube from around the world. So I can show you in a second. That includes Gmails, Yahoos, domains that we haven't heard of. They can all join and search. So they are included in all posts. So right now you can only search the whole entirety of Cube, which is great, but sometimes you may not want to know that someone in Bali is renting hotels, because we don't always get to kick them out as quickly as we can, or, you know what I mean? There's posts to be polluted here and there. So then once you become a verified educator, you can search for educators, filter down to educators around the world. And then you can search just with Ontario. So now if you're searching grade 3 math within Ontario, the likelihood of it being curriculum aligned is very high. And then so I am an employee of Dufferin Hill Catholic District School Board, so then I can look and connect with educators within my school board and see who's shared what and what's been shared specific to me. So that's the significant difference, and I'll just show you.
So for the students who are just signing up, they should start with the
They can use their Lakehead or a Gmail account. That would be fine too.
And then how do you become a verified educator?
Let me show you over here. So over here it says view all email addresses. Sorry, profile page. Actions, verify email right there. So you put in your email, and we do have all of the Ontario. We have most of America as well. We're working on the UK in our back end, so that once you put this in, you should automatically be given, the next time you log in, you should be given the green check mark. So I'll show you on the profile page here.
So the green check mark indicates it's a verified account.
That's correct.
Perfect.
That's correct. And I'll just show you here. So I'm going to search library because we have this, whoops.
Yeah, not your LinkedIn feed.
No, you don't want to see my LinkedIn. Library, because right here you see you have the library management software company that's just discovered us and decided to start advertising. So it's still there, but if I search educators only, it disappears.
Perfect.
And then with Ontario,
you get just the Ontario library people.
That's it. And then my school board's right there. And that's it.
Perfect.
Can I switch back, or would you like to
No,
Okay.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's helpful.
That
Susan,
was
if
sort of,
you signed up with say a Gmail account, you get on the supply list, which is what happened to me. If I put in my new email to that verify, will it change over?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it, and then you'll be all set.
Great.
That's great. So are you supplying right now, or?
I am not as much
Awesome.
as I would like with the strike and with things going on, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good though. At least once you're in, you're in.
Yes, for
It's
sure.
just a little bit of a rough patch right now.
So I noticed, Susan, that you tend to post or try and post something every day. Do you have a pattern or a way to keep this on your radar? Because, you know, we're working, we're doing coursework, and cubing resources may not be like the first thing you think of.
Right.
So
For me, it's, I'm just so collaborative in nature, and people, you know, that know me, they're like, it's no surprise that you develop Cube, because even, you know, in the neighborhood and, you know, being a mom, I'm the first person to say, hey, there's this robotics class. I'll drive the kids, sign up your kids. Or, you know, we have dogs. Hey, there's this great, like, it's just about, we're better together. I strongly believe. I don't believe you can do it alone. I think it truly takes a village, all those coined terms. And with Cube, whenever, because it's who I am, and it's my baby, so to speak, whenever I'm out somewhere and I meet someone and I hear a great resource, it top of mind for me. So I'm a little bit different. But I know that in the regular classrooms as well, you're going to meet people in the staff room, or if you're at a conference or on the picketing line, and conversations strike up, and you share resources or talk about, you know, some of the challenges you're having in your classroom, and they just come out of nowhere, and it's just having that top of mind to, I need to put this somewhere so I can go back to it when I have a chance.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, you know, we're heading into, in this course, into inquiry projects and collecting resources for this inquiry project. And this just naturally connects, I think, for me, that all these resources that people share in the course, in the discussion forums, is just taking it that one step further and cubing it so that other people can find it.
And it's not just other people, but it's you to find it at a later date. You know, it's one thing as well, for example, like Valentine's Day is today, and everybody's doing these provocations in kindergarten and these art things and all this, you know, everyone's doing all these things. And once you see, you're like, oh, that's good. But, you know, I've done mine, maybe next year. But then you forget about it until next year. Mm-hmm. So if you take the action, throw it in Cube for later, then it's there. And, you know, there were all these phenomenal, as you said, these conversation threads, and they happen on Facebook, to name one, or Twitter. But, I mean, Facebook's phenomenal for getting people together and talking. That's really showed me the value, and that's why we're going to reinstate our communication part. But at the same time, it's not a search engine to find resources. Like I think at least several times a day in the multitude of Facebook groups that I'm in, there's someone saying, there was once this resource that I saw, can someone find it for me? And because it's not designed for that, right?
And I see the same in Twitter.
Well, Twitter's exactly the same, right? It's a great global connector, but at the same time, it doesn't provide you that, you know, Cube's about the resources. It's about getting your hands on those resources when you need them and getting it quickly.
And even just crafting the folders so that you can connect, you know, things to communities even. So if you're part of a global community, in my case, several, then I can connect the resources for those communities in one place for my own sake.
Absolutely. Yeah, I found the folders extremely valuable, and I
hadn't thought of the conference connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And throwing them, you could throw them in a folder as well. I really enjoy sharing, and because I am such a natural collaborator, like I have a great folder on Black History Month, which is this month. And it's got about 18, and every time I see a resource, it's got about 18 resources in it. And I've got it opened up publicly. So it's an ugly, big, long URL. But when I share it, people don't have to join Cube if they don't want to. They can just open it up and get to the resources.
Right.
And And that's kind of the bottom line, is getting to your students as quickly as you can, and not spending the up to 15, 16 hours a week outside of the classroom looking for resources.
And I think the one thing that you mentioned before we started recording was the ability to connect with other people in CUBE. And I think you've done some really interesting things around highlighting or spotlighting some of the people that you see actively sharing and actively involved in CUBE. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, in our blog, we started blogging about users that are actively sharing and highlighting them and promoting them, because we strongly believe, again, that you're better together. So that we would write a blog highlighting, and then I really enjoyed the podcast. I just thought I'd jump in with that. I listened to the podcast. It was really good. But I did notice that it said that we were 34,000 links strong, and we're 57. So I was like, I think I need to write a blog about that.
Mm-hmm. And we can link you to that podcast that the students created.
Yeah, no, it was really well done, really well done. And then we also, I think it said we had 60,000 social media following. We have a combined following of now 125,000.
Wow.
So in highlighting educators, we're all about that promoting, and when we wrote those blogs and put them together, we would cross promote to our wider audience and other social media outlets. And just, it's all about bringing people together and helping them make those connections. You know, and we're also looking at infusing a little bit of AI. So very recently, my weekend was spent helping one of the developers make those connections and start building that, so that we can start having CUBE do the thinking for you and say, hey, you just search for this resource. Look at these resources shared by these people. You might like to know about those, right?
Yeah.
Just try and build it in even more so that people can continue those connections.
Especially as it grows and gains momentum. And you know, you look at geographic locations, trying to find Ontario resources that are going to fit for my grade 3 math program right now.
Yes, and that's just it. So that's where, when we start the groups again, that'll really make a difference too, because people gravitate to what they know, and when you get true collaborators, they can help it collaborate.
Perfect. Shauna, did you have anything you wanted to ask Susan, or comments about your CUBE experience?
Well, I think that my CUBE experience was extremely helpful when I was in Teachers College, because I think you mentioned earlier, Susan, I would be sitting in class and these teachers would be giving us all of these resources every single class. And I wanted to remember them because they seemed of value to me, but I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't want to create like a huge Google Docs that I'll eventually lose. And I didn't have a place for them. And so CUBE was like a really cool resource for me to be able to keep them all in one place. So it was a really valuable internship for me 2 years ago now.
Wow, time flies.
Yeah, it does.
Flies. And that's great, because now you're getting into classrooms, and then once you graduate, if that's the direction you're taking, then they're still sitting there waiting for you.
Absolutely.
Ready to use.
I haven't quite figured out how to master it with this program, because I'm reading so many academic articles and journals and not necessarily as tangible of resources for educators.
Yeah.
So that's
right. And I mean, the other thing too is CUBE is for the educators. So whatever level or type of educator you are. So the fact that it's academic, if it's something you need to say for yourself, then put it on your profile, add it on CUBE. And if you can share it legally, if it's open source, not open source, but Creative Commons, then do that, because it's about you. And I'm sure there's someone else on the planet that will find value in it, but really it's about you and making it your own, because that profile page and that spot is an opportunity for you to host your best practice and keep everything education related in one spot. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid don't be afraid about sharing your academic stuff. If it's a value and it's something you need to keep, right? At your fingertips, feel free to share it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Creative Commons, because that was also part of the coursework for this past week. And just bringing an awareness to the fact that when we create things and we want to share them, we can designate how people can share them, without falling over the copyright issues. We can share things by just saying, give me just name me as the author of this piece, or this graphic that I've designed or developed for my classroom. Just name it. If you're going to use it, give me credit by naming it. Link to my cube to say, here's where you found it. That kind of sharing practice, I think. I'm becoming more and more aware of the fact that when I look for stuff, and I automatically now look for, how can I share it, or can I share it, or is it under copyright? I can't share it. And, the boxes that copyright puts us in. And yeah, I'm going to advocate for Creative Commons licensing on everything that we create.
I would agree. I mean, and when it first became more well-known, as it was quite a big thing in recent years, and people were, I remember on Twitter, they would not, if they didn't share something and give credit, they were scolded publicly. It was quite a big deal. I don't know if it's still as common, or if people have finally just taken on quite naturally to the fact that you need to give credit where credit's due, right?
Yeah. Even if it doesn't have any Creative Commons or. And
that's, so there are a lot of hyperdocs on Cube, and I don't know if your students are familiar with hyperdocs, but they're an incredible resource in that it's created by an educator somewhere in the world, and it could be for a specific theme or topic, and it's a whole entire lesson with links included, and sometimes there's quizzes, sometimes there's videos. On that Black History Month folder, I have a couple very, very thorough, impressive hyperdocs in there. But again, when we share them, I think it's important to either say who it was from, or in the image it should say by so-and-so, and that's still, in my respect, giving credit, because it's still visible, right?
Yeah.
So that's an important, and that they've been shared openly because you find them openly.
So as the students go in another week or so, they're going to go in and start curating some resources. It'd be just very lovely to start looking at the resources that are available in Cube and collecting them in some way. So that would be meaningful, a meaningful way to start.
For sure, and any user can make a folder. Please bear with us with our folders. They don't look very pretty on the outside right now, because we're going to infuse it with a picture. They used to be cute little cube boxes, and now they're getting more digital. So they're in sort of a limbo place right now, but it's coming. But they're still very functional, and you can have images inside. Anybody can create a folder. It's really simple. Just add a folder. You give it a name. You should designate it, public, private, or cube. And just as a note while I'm mentioning it, when you create your account, if you create it publicly, that means it's searchable on the outside web, on Google. It's actually still searchable, but it'll say your account is private if it's private. But by making it public, it allows you to be far more freer and collaborative, in that you can designate folders as public and then share that link to that folder out to somebody and get them those resources if that's your intention. It also allows you to use Cube as sort of like, I have Cube locked into my Twitter profile, because that's my bio of who I am as an educator, and here's who I am, what I believe, and here's all the resources that I use in my practice. So I use it in that respect as well. But anyways, anyone can make a folder, and you can go through the search engine, and one of the drop downs says add. And once you've created a folder, you can just highlight it and drop them into the folder. So that's a way that you can curate some of the resources that you find on Cube.
I just want to thank you so much, Susan, for taking time out of a happy Valentine Day, beautiful sunny day here in Ontario. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to the students and recording this session for the purposes of our collaborative, co-learning. Every time I listen and talk to you, Susan, I learn something new. So I appreciate your time.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks very much for having me. It's great to see you both, and best of luck, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'll stop recording.